Elara Ames yanked open the heavy door of the bar, ducking in from the cold spring rain, her curls damp around her face and her coat clinging to her arms. Every stool at the bar was taken, and almost every table was full, not surprising for a Friday night in Manhattan. She wasn't here for company. She just needed one drink before walking back to her tiny apartment and facing another weekend of job applications and microwave dinners. She scanned the room, eyes catching on a man in a tailored charcoal suit sitting alone at a corner table, his attention half on a glass of bourbon and half on the jazz band playing in the back. Desperate to sit, Elara approached him. "Is this seat taken?" The man glanced up, and for a split second she froze. He was striking. Not just good-looking, his features were sharp, almost cold, but his eyes were warm and golden like honey in sunlight. He looked like he belonged anywhere but in a crowded downtown bar. He tilted his head. "Not anymore." She slid into the seat opposite him, dropping her bag to the floor and sighing in relief. "Thank you. I thought I was going to end up drinking on the curb." He gave a short laugh. That might have made for a better story. She smiled, then flagged down a server for a gin and tonic. "I'm Elara, by the way. I figured if I'm invading your space, the least I can do is introduce myself." The man studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable before he extended his hand. "Quentin Pierce." She shook it, surprised by how firm and warm his grip was. "Nice to meet you, Quentin. You too." They sat in silence for a few beats, not awkward but curious. Elara could feel him watching her, and not in a creepy way. It was like he was trying to figure something out about her but not saying what. She took a sip of her drink and glanced around. The lighting in the bar was low and moody, candles flickering on every table, an old Miles Davis tune humming through the speakers. "You're not from around here," Quentin said suddenly. Elara raised a brow. "Is it that obvious? You don't have that rushed, edge of burnout energy most New Yorkers do," Elara laughed. "I just moved here 6 months ago. I'm still in the honeymoon phase, kind of." "Let me guess, actor, artist?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. "Graphic designer, freelance." "Which means I'm usually broke." That made him smile. "At least you're honest." "What about you?" she asked. "Finance guy with a hidden jazz obsession." Quentin's eyes flicked away for half a second, then back. "You could say that, I'm right?" she teased. "Something like that." They talked for another hour, their conversation slipping easily from favorite books to worst jobs to the best pizza slice in the city. Elara found herself laughing more than she had in weeks. Quentin had a calmness about him, the kind that made people lean in closer without realizing it. He didn't fill silences with empty words. He listened. When she finally checked the time on the wall clock, her eyes widened. "Wow. I didn't mean to hijack your whole night." "You didn't," he said simply. Elara hesitated. "I should go, though. Rain's probably let up." Quentin stood as she did, helping her into her coat like it was second nature. His hand brushed her shoulder and her breath caught. There was something about the way he looked at her, soft but focused, like he already knew she'd be hard to forget. "You sure you don't want to ride?" he asked, voice low. "I walked." "It's only like 10 blocks. He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he reached into his coat pocket and handed her a business card. "In case you change your mind or want another drink sometime." She turned it over. Plain card, no title, no job listed. Just a name, Quentin Pierce, and a number. "Thanks," she said, tucking it into her bag. "Good night, Quentin." "Good night, Elara." The door shut behind her, and he watched through the window as she disappeared down the street, disappearing into the city like she'd never been there at all. But Quentin didn't move. He sat back down, staring at the place where she'd been sitting, and smiled to himself like a man who just found something he didn't know he'd been looking for. 2 days later, Elara stood in front of a massive glass building in Midtown, staring up at the skyscraper like it personally offended her. She clutched the folded paper in her hand, an email from a client she'd designed a logo for last year. The email said she had a new opportunity and that the meeting was here, at Pierce Global Holdings. The receptionist greeted her with a practiced smile. You must be Elara Ames. Mr. Pierce is waiting for you on the top floor. Elara blinked. Mr. Pierce? Yes, the woman said, motioning her toward a private elevator. Elara stepped inside, the doors closing behind her before she could say anything else. Her head spun. Could it be the same Quentin? When the elevator opened, she stepped into a space that didn't look like an office, it looked like a luxury apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors. A sleek black desk with a nameplate, Quentin Pierce, and sitting behind it in a navy suit and no tie was him. Elara froze. You've got to be kidding me. Quentin looked up, smiling slowly. Hi again. This is your company. He stood, walking around the desk. One of them. You're a billionaire. That's what Forbes keeps telling me. Elara stared at him, her mouth opening and closing. You let me ramble about being broke for an hour. I liked hearing you talk. She folded her arms. You didn't think to mention you're basically Bruce Wayne. I didn't think it mattered, and honestly, I didn't want it to. Elara stared at him, heart pounding for reasons she couldn't name. Why am I here? He walked closer, stopping just in front of her. Because I haven't stopped thinking about you, and I want to know if you felt it too. She did. God, she did, but her world had flipped in less than 5 minutes. I don't date rich guys, she said, even though it sounded ridiculous as it left her mouth. He grinned. You didn't know I was rich when we met. She shook her head, trying not to laugh. You're insane. Maybe, he said, but I'm not wrong. Have dinner with me. Elaborate steakhouse or pizza on a stoop, your choice. Just say yes. Elara looked at him, really looked. The confidence, the warmth, the way he didn't push, just waited. She took a breath. Okay, Quentin. Yes. And when he smiled, it was the kind that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a coincidence at all. Elara stood in front of the mirror, tugging at the hem of her blouse for the 4th time. She'd chosen it because it made her feel confident. Simple black silk, with an open neckline and sleeves that flared just slightly at the wrists. Paired with dark jeans and ankle boots that didn't scream trying too hard. It was the best balance she could strike between casual and not wanting to look like she'd just rolled out of bed. It wasn't a date, she told herself again. Just dinner. Just a very wealthy man asking her to dinner after inviting her to one of the most intimidating offices she'd ever stepped foot in. She exhaled and glanced at the time. He'd sent a car. The town car was waiting downstairs, parked crisply at the curb, engine purring. The driver opened the door without a word, and the moment she slid inside, the scent of leather and cedar filled her senses. She didn't ask where they were going. She figured she'd find out soon enough. 15 minutes later, she stepped out into a quiet alley where a single black awning stretched over a narrow wooden door. No name on the building, no menu in the window. The driver nodded toward the entrance and pulled away. She hesitated, then knocked once. The door opened soundlessly, revealing a dimly lit interior lined with candle sconces and floor-to-ceiling wine racks. A hostess with a sleek braid greeted her by name and led her past curtained booths to a private dining room at the back. Quentin stood as she entered, his jacket draped over the back of his chair, sleeves rolled to his elbows, collar open at the throat. The flickering light played across the table between them where 2 glasses of wine already waited. You found it, he said, walking around to pull out her chair. I had help, she answered, settling in. He poured water into her glass without asking first. Is this place even real? She asked, glancing at the room. Or did you dream it up just for dramatic effect? It's not on any map, he said. But the chef owes me a favor. Of course he does, she muttered under her breath, making him laugh. Dinner arrived in courses, bite-sized dishes full of flavor Elara had never imagined. She recognized some ingredients, but others she couldn't pronounce, and Quentin didn't explain unless she asked. He didn't show off, he didn't push, he just paid attention. Halfway through the meal, she leaned back, sipping her wine. So what exactly do you do, Quentin Pierce, besides own buildings that look like Bond villain lairs? He rested his forearms on the table. I build companies. Sometimes I fix broken ones. Occasionally I walk away before they burn to the ground. That sounds intense. It can be, but I'm good at it, she tilted her head. And that's fulfilling for you, making more money, his gaze didn't waver. No. That part got old years ago. Then why keep doing it? He looked at her for a moment. Because I was raised on nothing, and building something from it, it made me believe I had control, even when I didn't. She didn't expect that answer. It landed somewhere between admiration and unease in her chest. Where did you grow up? She asked. Queens. 1-bedroom walk up. My mother worked at a laundromat. My father left when I was 8, and now you own half of Manhattan. He didn't respond to that. Instead, he reached for a bottle of wine and refilled her glass. What about you? What made you come here? She hesitated. I thought I had a job lined up, a startup. They ghosted me 3 days after I signed the lease on my apartment, he winced. That's brutal. Yeah. I've been freelancing since. Barely, I'd leave, but I'm too stubborn to admit I was wrong. A silence settled between them, thick but not uncomfortable. Then he leaned forward slightly. I might have something, he said. A project, short-term, high-profile. It's not charity. I need someone who understands visual storytelling. You'd be paid well. She stared at him, unsure how to respond. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you an opportunity. You can say no. I'll still ask you to dinner again. She narrowed her eyes. What's the catch? No catch. Just a man who liked what he saw and wants to see more. Her pulse fluttered, but she kept her tone even. I don't want to be someone's project. You're not, he said quietly. You're someone I see value in. That's different. She looked down at her plate, then back up. I'll think about it. Take your time. They left the restaurant just before 10. Rain had started again, softer this time, glittering in the streetlights. The driver waited with the door open, but Elara paused at the curb. I'll walk, she said. It's not far. Quentin didn't protest. He just stepped closer. You always walk alone after dinner with strange men, she looked up at him. Only when the streets are well lit, he laughed, then hesitated. Can I see you again? She considered it, then nodded once. But next time I pick the place. He held her gaze. I look forward to it. He didn't kiss her. He didn't even touch her. But the way he looked at her, as if she was already something important, made her stomach twist in a way no one else ever had. She turned and started walking, the city humming around her, heart pounding louder than the rain. Elara stood in the middle of a vast gallery space in Soho, surrounded by white walls, brass light fixtures, and 6-foot canvases that hadn't even been uncrated yet. The scent of fresh paint and sawdust clung to the air. A clipboard with floor plans rested in her hands, and beyond the massive bay windows, the city glinted under the soft veil of dusk. Quentin had offered her the project 3 days ago. She'd said yes yesterday. Now she was knee-deep in it. The job was simple on paper. Create a cohesive visual identity for the launch of a new nonprofit art foundation, a branch of one of Quentin's many investments. But nothing about this space was simple. The opening gala was in 8 days. The space still looked like a construction site. And the committee overseeing it, a collection of tightly wound donors who didn't like being told no. Are these lights supposed to be this dim? She asked, lifting her voice over the distant sound of drilling. They're on a dimmer tied to the automation system, Quentin replied behind her. She turned. He'd just arrived, dressed in a black turtleneck and slate-gray slacks, his overcoat dusted with stray raindrops. He looked out of place among the plastic sheeting and paint buckets, but he didn't seem to care. Let me guess, she said. The automation system costs more than my entire student loan debt. Probably, he said, walking further into the room. But it works. She watched him move through the space like he already saw the finished product in his mind. It made her stomach twist in a way that had nothing to do with work. They delivered the wrong frames for the centerpiece installation, she said, flipping through her notes. The wood's too dark. I called the supplier, but they won't have replacements until Friday. We'll fly in a new set, he said without hesitation. From where? Wherever they're in stock, she blinked. You're just going to fly them in. I don't like losing time, Elara frowned. You do realize most people just wait, he met her gaze. You're not most people. She looked away, pulse quickening. You trust me with a lot, considering we barely know each other. I know how people carry themselves when things get complicated, he said. You don't flinch. She crossed her arms, unsure whether to be flattered or concerned. How many other women have you said that to? None who argued with me as much as you do. Her brows lifted. You mean I question your every move? I mean you don't pretend I'm always right. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she turned back to the layout. There's a dead space near the west wall, she said. If we don't fill it with something intentional, it's going to look like a mistake. What do you suggest? A single piece, isolated, something bold. You'll pick it, he said. She glanced at him. Just like that. The only reason this project is working is because you don't ask permission, Elara. Don't start now. That night she stopped by the gallery again after hours. The crew had gone home, the lights were off, and the rain had returned, tapping softly against the windows. She leaned against the glass, watching reflections of cabs slide across the wet pavement. Footsteps approached behind her. You left your bag on the scaffold, Quentin said, holding it out. She took it. Thanks. He didn't leave. Instead, he stepped beside her, hands in his pockets, eyes on the street. Why this space? She asked. You could have built something twice as big uptown and filled it with safer work. I didn't want safe, he said. I wanted honest. That's not a word people usually associate with billionaires. Then they've been spending time with the wrong ones. She looked at him. You ever think about what you'd be doing if none of this had worked, every day? And I'd probably be somewhere like this. Not owning it, just watching. Wondering how close I could get before someone told me I didn't belong. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. She studied him carefully. You still feel that way, sometimes. That's ridiculous, maybe. But success doesn't erase the echo of where you started. She hesitated. You don't talk like someone who's used to being worshipped. I don't want to be worshipped. What do you want to be? He turned toward her. Understood. She didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything. She just stayed there, shoulder to shoulder with him, watching the city breathe outside. A cab honked somewhere in the distance. The lights from a nearby building flickered on, then he asked, without looking at her, if I kissed you right now, would you stop me? Her heart rattled in her chest. She thought about dodging, about making a joke or pretending she hadn't heard. But instead, she said softly, no. He turned, reaching slowly, giving her space to move if she wanted to. She didn't. His hand brushed her jaw, warm and certain, and then his lips met hers soft at first, then deeper, more certain, like he'd been waiting for this moment longer than he was willing to admit. When they finally parted, she kept her eyes closed a second longer, trying to catch her breath. I should go, she said, not moving. I won't stop you. But he didn't step away either. She leaned back enough to look at him. This is going to get complicated. I hope so, he said. Simple's never been my style. She left a few minutes later, walking home without calling a car. The rain had eased into a mist and the streets were quiet. She didn't know what this was yet. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was drifting. She felt like she was moving towards something real. The night of the gala arrived with thunderclouds pressing low over the city, the kind that threatened rain but held it back like a breath waiting to be exhaled. Elara stood near the center of the gallery, her heart pacing faster than it should have. Not from nerves those had burned off 2 sleepless nights ago, but from the sheer gravity of what stood around her. The once raw space had transformed into a spectacle of light and atmosphere. Cool-toned uplighting crawled up the walls in slow rhythms. Sculptures stood like sentinels among curated paintings. A flowing installation of silk and steel hovered midair, the centerpiece she'd fought to include, now drawing hushed awe from every guest who passed beneath it. She wore a navy jumpsuit with a deep V cut in the back and gold accents at the shoulders, not borrowed, not designer, but tailored by her own hand. She'd worked herself to exhaustion, but this was hers. A champagne flute appeared beside her. You made this happen, Quentin said. She took the glass and turned to face him. His tuxedo was classic, nothing flashy, but the way he carried it made him stand apart from the crowd. Not because he was richer or more powerful, though he was both, but because he looked like he belonged in every room without ever needing to prove it. "I didn't think I'd survive this week," Elara said. "I haven't eaten anything that wasn't from a takeout container since Monday." "I had the caterers set aside a plate for you in the back," he said. "Also, your favorite chocolate," she blinked. "How do you know what my favorite chocolate is?" "I watched you eat 3 squares of it in a row while sketching the lighting layout. You remember that?" "I remember everything you do when you think no one's watching." She took a sip, eyes fixed on the crowd. "They like it. They love it," he said. "They're already talking about replicating it in LA." She glanced at him. "Are you serious?" "I never say things I don't mean." A woman in a white column dress brushed past them with a nod of acknowledgement. Elara noticed how people parted for Quentin without him ever needing to raise his voice or wave for attention. He didn't dominate. He simply existed with such certainty that others adjusted around him. "I don't know how you do it," Elara said. "Do what? Make people notice you without asking them to?" "I don't care if they notice me." She tilted her head. "Then what do you care about?" He waited a beat too long before answering. "What I leave behind." Elara's gaze softened. "You mean your legacy?" "I mean the version of me that exists when I'm not in the room. That's the only one that matters." Before she could respond, a curator approached and pulled Quentin away for a conversation about a pledge. Elara moved toward the west wall, where the silk installation cast shifting shadows on the stone floor. She watched the light move across the folds and caught her own reflection in the window behind it. She didn't look out of place. Not anymore. She looked like she belonged. A low voice interrupted her thoughts. "You should know," said a man behind her. "Quentin's never done this before." She turned. The speaker was older, in his 60s, with silver hair and a tailored suit that suggested he moved in the same circles as Quentin. His tone wasn't hostile, just curious. "Done what? Given someone this much creative freedom without a contract, or walked away from his own board's input, or stood in a corner of a gala watching a woman more than he watched the investors?" Elara lifted her chin. "I didn't ask him to." "I didn't say you did." She frowned. "Who are you?" Elias Ward. "I sit on the Foundation's senior advisory panel. I've known Quentin since he was barely out of college." "Then you should know he doesn't do things he doesn't want to." "I know," Elias said. "That's why I introduced myself." He handed her a card and disappeared into the crowd. Quentin returned just as Elias vanished. "What did he say?" "That you're not acting like yourself." Quentin's jaw flexed slightly. "He's not wrong." "Is that a good thing?" He stepped closer. "You tell me. I think you're used to hiding behind everything you've built, and now you're not." He studied her face, then reached for her hand. "Come with me." She followed him without question, through a side door, down a staircase, into a quiet courtyard behind the building. It was empty. Ivy clung to the brick walls. String lights overhead glowed faintly in the misty air. The hum of the city felt far away here, like another world. He turned to her. "I didn't lie that night in the bar. I didn't know you'd be at my office the next day. I didn't plan any of this. I believe you. But I've made more plans since then than I have in years, all because of you." She held his gaze, heart thudding against her ribs. "I want more than just moments in hidden corners," he said. "I want mornings with you, arguments about coffee strength. Late nights spent building something that's ours, not just mine." Her throat tightened. "You're not saying this because the gala went well." "No. I'm saying it because I've already imagined what it's like to wake up with you beside me, and I can't imagine not knowing what that feels like in real life." She stepped toward him, close enough to feel the heat of his breath. "Then ask me." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a narrow velvet box. Her breath caught. "I'm not asking for forever today," he said. "I'm asking for the start of forever." He opened it. A ring blinked up at her, simple and elegant, a single stone framed by a delicate twist of platinum. "Say yes," he whispered. Elara didn't hesitate. "Yes." The rain finally fell, gentle as lace, and Quentin pulled her into his arms, kissing her under the soft rhythm of it. When they returned to the gallery, hand in hand, the room looked different. Not because anything had changed, but because everything had. And this time, when people looked at Quentin, they weren't just seeing a man who built empires. They were seeing the woman beside him, the one who'd made him believe in things he'd long forgotten he wanted. A seat in a crowded bar had changed everything, and neither of them would ever forget it. Elara adjusted the gold clasp at her wrist as she stepped into the towering glass atrium of the Langford Plaza Hotel. The final exhibition event for the Pierce Foundation's inaugural showcase was already in motion, with art collectors, critics, and founders gathering beneath a chandelier that resembled a cascade of frozen stars. The foundation's name was etched across the marble floor in sleek brass, the Pierce Collective. The branding was hers, the vision was theirs, and the future? That was still unfolding. She spotted Quentin near a cluster of museum directors, his dress shirt open at the collar, sleeves slightly rolled, and a tumbler of something amber in his hand. He caught her gaze across the crowd. No nod, no signal, just a quiet, magnetic stillness that pulled her to him. "You're late," he said when she reached him. "You're early," she countered, letting her fingers brush against his. "Only because I had to make sure they displayed your work properly." She narrowed her eyes. "You told me this wasn't about me." "It wasn't. Then I saw the guest list. And the placement of your name in the program. It was buried between logistics and lighting credits." She blinked. "You had them change it." "I had them print new programs." She stared at him. "You're impossible." He leaned in, voice low. "You're not the first person to say that tonight." A curator walked by and caught Quentin's attention, launching into a brief conversation about acquiring one of the installations for a permanent space in Tokyo. Elara drifted toward the edge of the room, where a small crowd was gathered around a series of digital panels showcasing behind-the-scenes footage from the Foundation's transformation. There she was on screen, sleeves rolled up, chalk smudged on her neck, laughing about something off camera. She hadn't even known the footage had been taken. A voice to her right spoke up. "You're the reason this place doesn't look like every other sterile gallery in the city." She turned. A woman in a velvet dress, mid-40s, hair pinned into a sleek coil, offered her a glass of wine. "You're not wrong," Elara said, taking the glass, "but I had help." "I've been collecting for 20 years, the woman said, "and I've never seen a launch that felt this personal. It's not just curated, it's lived in." Elara nodded once. "That was the goal." "Well, you achieved it." "I already told the board I'll be donating another piece next month. I hope you're still here when it arrives." "I plan to be." Later that evening, Quentin found her on the rooftop terrace, the city stretching beyond the glass railing like a mosaic of gold and smoke. The air was warm, windless. The kind of night New York only offered as a reward for surviving the chaos. "I thought I'd find you up here," he said. "I needed air." He stood beside her, his voice quieter now. "They want to expand." "I figured they would. 3 cities," he continued. "London, Paris, and Singapore." "But I told them no," she glanced at him. "Why?" "Because I don't want to chase scale anymore. I want to build something that lasts, something that doesn't need to be everywhere to matter." She turned to face him fully. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I meant it, Elara. What I said in that courtyard. I want a life with you. Not just a string of launches and dinners and gallery walls. I want the mornings. The mundane. The things no one writes headlines about." She hesitated, heart kicking harder against her ribs. "You've never done this before, have you? Fallen in love?" he asked. She nodded. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Not like this," she exhaled, eyes stinging. "I didn't come here looking for any of this. I just wanted a chance to prove I could survive." "You didn't just survive," he said. "You rewrote the rules." She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him toward her until his forehead rested against hers. "If we do this, it's not going to be perfect." "I don't want perfect," he said. "I want you." He kissed her again, not like the first time, not like the second, but with the quiet, anchored certainty of a man who had finally arrived somewhere he didn't want to leave. They married 6 months later, not in a ballroom or a cathedral. but in a converted greenhouse in the Hudson Valley, surrounded by wild ivy, close friends, and the kind of laughter that came from years of being misunderstood and finally finding the one person who saw everything. Quentin wore a charcoal suit and no tie. Elara wore a white silk dress that caught the breeze like a sail. There was no aisle, no fanfare, just a promise spoken under soft light and warm sky. He didn't buy her a private island. He bought the building that housed the gallery where it all began. And gifted her the deed with a single line written on the back, "For the woman who taught me that love doesn't need walls, but it builds the strongest ones." They turned the gallery into a permanent community space, part exhibit, part workshop, part studio for artists who had stories to tell and no platform to tell them on. Elara ran it. Quentin funded it. And together, they made it more than either of them could have imagined. He still flew across the world when necessary. But more often than not, he was home before midnight, helping her fold laundry or arguing over which wine to pair with takeout. They fought sometimes. Laughed more, took long walks through Central Park with no destination, hosted dinners for people who had once been strangers but had become family. Years later, when someone asked Elara how it all began, she would smile and say, "With rain, and a bar, and a man who didn't care that I had nothing." But the truth was simpler. It began when two people stopped pretending they didn't need anyone and chose, instead, to need each other on purpose. And they never stopped choosing, not once.